Usually, and this is a developer conference, I know you guys are, my kin in here, hate prototypes. I mean, it's a waste of time. Like, why would I build a prototype? I'm the developer, I'm gonna build the thing. Like, why would I waste the time? And truthfully, to the development team, that's often kind of the perspective. It's not valuable to us. It's not gonna affect the long-term trajectory. I'm gonna build the same thing. But the problem is the process isn't just developers. There's more to the process. So let's kind of look at what a typical process looks like. You got a business, they request a new feature. Sometimes you have like an analyst team that's going to look at your current software, your current feature set, and see how that slots in. Once we have that, we got some specs, the developer's going to write it. Typically you have QA or some kind of tester that's going to make sure it works right. The business is then going to come in and say, okay, let's take a look. And then we hit this cycle, this rework cycle, where the business says, that's not what we wanted. And so they request another change, the developer's gonna rewrite it, and the QA is gonna test it again, and the business looks at it again. And they still don't like it, and they test it again, and again, and again, and again, and eventually it goes out. And we wanna minimize how long you stay in rework. Ideally, you don't hit rework at all. You do it right, the business likes it, it goes out. So, what causes rework? A lot of times what the business asked for is not actually what they wanted. And even if it is what they wanted, a lot of the times, the need they have, that doesn't actually satisfy the need. And kind of from the more technical side of this, a lot of times businesses just don't understand best practice. And so it's functional, but it's not right. They kind of didn't do this the way it should have been done. There's a better way to do it. So let's look at an example. Call it 100 hours. You got a development team that spends 100 hours writing this, and they satisfy the business request. But then they have to do rework, and they spend like 60 hours getting to that business need. So instead of that 100 hours that you banked on, that's how long it's gonna take me, you spend like 160. And this, it could be less, could be more. It's kind of just a spitball, but that's kind of where we are. So how can we minimize rework? How can we improve kind of the feedback loop? How can we get this out faster? Prototypes, name of the talk. So the nice thing about prototypes is you get something in front of the business, and the business can say, kind of like that, but like this instead. Or, I don't really like that. Could we try? What can we do differently? And as developers, we can say, oh, well, you don't like radio buttons. You can do drop down. You can do different things. We can kind of suggest and coach them once we get it in front of them. And a lot of times, as development teams, we don't really have an understanding of the software. So someone from the business says, well, what happens when the user does whatever? I don't know, that's not something we accounted for. So it's kind of nice to have that business user, that business perspective there to kind of illustrate maybe gaps in our knowledge. So let's look at an example again with a prototype. We spend 20 hours building out just a bare bones prototype. We get something in front of them. From there, we can ask the questions, we can get the feedback, we can really talk through what did they actually want? What's the best programmatic way to do this? How do we get this the best solution for every party? And then we still spend that 100 hours or so. We go from a 160-hour process to a 120-hour. Again, just an example. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Sometimes it's not really any improvement, but that's sort of a typical example. So when I say prototype, what do I actually mean? I call it a small semi-functional representation of a new feature. You could have hard-coded values, you have static validation or no validation at all. We're just getting something out there for them to see. When I say inexhaustive, we're not creating the entire solution. We're not building out the whole thing. At that point, you're not saving time. And it's quick. You want to get this in as early in the process as possible. If you are agile, if you're sprint-based, if you're booking call 3 sprints, you want that first sprint to have a prototype. You want to have something concrete, something to see before we actually spend those last 2 sprints developing, writing good code. So this is an example that I absolutely just ripped off of my employer's website that our front-end team over here 100% wrote. You guys do awesome work. We'll say it's out of context. This form is actually huge. There's a whole lot more to it, but we're just wanting this, one particular section. Not all fields are represented here. The drop down could have a bajillion things. It could be based on like database information. It could be based on a lot of things that we just don't want to spend the time hooking that up to a data store and just doing all the things like that. That wastes time. We'll get to that when we get to that. What the business wants to see is just kind of what this is going to look like to a user. And this is fine. The static validation here on the credit score, it could not be there at all. There could be the implication of, yes, 850 is the highest credit score. We're going to show you what it would look like if they tried something, or it's just not even there and the business knows you can't have more than 850. That's fine. That's an expectation we can have. So We'll say prototypes aren't perfect. They do take time to build. If you are on a really, really tight time frame and the business is not really going to give you the time to do this, that could be a hard sell. That 20 hours out of 100, that's 20%. That's not trivial. And a lot of times businesses, they don't really have the appetite for something they can't appreciate tangible value for. And as a complete confession, a lot of times organizations won't look at it. You build a prototype, there's nobody to look at it. There's no business representative that's gonna say, oh, that's good, but, or yeah, we like it, keep going. Nobody's gonna look at it, and if nobody's gonna look at it, there's no point. So are they right for you? Are you the solo dev on a project that's yours and no business? Don't write a prototype. This is your project. You're gonna build what you're gonna build. You already have these sort of ideas in your head. You already know what you want. There's no point in building a prototype. Like I said, it doesn't change the end trajectory. Just build it. Is it a really, really small change to an already existing project? You might not need it. That's one of those things of, especially if you have rapport with the business, you've worked with these people before, they know what to ask for, you kind of speak the same language, might not be necessary, and it's not gonna be typically a long project anyway. Again, if the business isn't actually gonna look at the prototype, don't bother, not worth it. But if it's a larger feature, if it's very important, got a lot of business attention on it, build the prototype. That's it. If you have questions, hit them up on Zulip. Try to be quick, hope I'm in under 10 minutes, I don't know, but.
Your favorite tools other than just
What was the question?
yeah, like favorite tools other than going straight to code?
I know a lot of people like Figmas and mockups and stuff like that, and I think that's great if you have like someone that's very visual that can do that. The problem is like our team is very lean and we don't really have that sort of intermediary that floats. So typically our front-end team does very much just mock up and kind of show them. That's the best thing we got. So anything else, hit me up on Zula. Thank you guys. Enjoy the conference.